My name is Michelle Grant, 28 years old, and the overlooked daughter of what I thought was a simple blue-collar family. If you're tuning in from a similar family saga, maybe dealing with in-laws who look down on you or secrets that could upend everything, drop a comment below and subscribe to see how I transformed my father's hidden legacy into a reckoning that redefined our lives forever. I grew up in a modest suburb of Seattle, in a cozy ranch-style house with a backyard that needed constant mowing and a garage full of tools. From the outside, we were the epitome of middle-class America, hardworking, unassuming, and content. My grandfather, Elias Grant, had started Grant Innovations in his basement back in the 1970s with a beat-up typewriter and a groundbreaking idea for supply chain software. He turned it into a local success story before my father, Thomas Grant, took the reins in the 1990s. Dad expanded it aggressively. Every family barbecue, every holiday gathering, revolved around tales of his business acumen. The Grant name became synonymous with innovation in Seattle's tech circles, but Dad always downplayed it, insisting on living simply. There were just the two of us after Mom passed away when I was young. Breast cancer took her too soon. Dad raised me alone, teaching me the value of hard work while hiding the full extent of his success. I was the only child, but Dad treated me like an apprentice rather than an heir. I majored in business at the University of Washington, interning at small firms, but Dad never pulled strings to get me into the family business. "Earn it, Michelle," he'd say. But my fiancé Evan's family saw me as a charity case, a nobody trying to climb their social ladder. Evan came from old Seattle money. His family owned Harper Logistics, a mid-sized shipping company worth about $50 million. Evan had leveraged his connections to become a social media influencer, boasting 500,000 followers who adored his curated glimpses into Pacific Northwest luxury living. His mother, Victoria Harper, came from established wealth and handled family conflicts like all proper society matrons, by ignoring them and sipping another latte. Family events always orbited around Evan's world, industry talk that somehow excluded me and Dad. Evan and his brother Ethan would dominate with tales of high society deals, while I sat quietly, despite knowing the logistics market inside out. If I chimed in, Evan's mom would smile patronizingly. "Since you think you're so good, maybe you should keep quiet, Michelle. Let's leave the real business to the experts." The turning point came 3 years ago. Fresh out of college, I'd pitched a drone delivery integration for Harper Logistics that could have disrupted competitors early. I prepared for months, market analysis, prototypes, the works. Evan finally convinced his family to let me present at a board meeting. I remember entering that sleek conference room, heart racing, laptop in hand. The board, mostly older men, friends of the Harpers, watched impassively as I demoed. Midway through, Evan's dad, Robert Harper, interrupted. "Enough. This is innovative, but impractical for us. Our clients want reliability, not gadgets." He turned to the board with a shrug. "Michelle's enthusiasm is admirable. Pity it's the only thing she has to offer." The humiliation stung as I packed up amid their chuckles. I moved in with Evan, taking a sales job at his family's company to stay close. His parents assumed it was temporary, indulging me with smirks. "She'll come around when reality hits," I overheard Robert telling Victoria. Those early days were tough, long hours, saving every penny, but I thrived, climbing to sales manager while secretly developing my ideas. Unbeknownst to me, Dad had been testing me all along, disguising his vast wealth, Empire Holdings, the trillion-dollar conglomerate he'd quietly built from Grant Innovations, to ensure I earned my place without entitlement. As wedding day approached, tensions simmered. Evan's family insisted on a lavish affair at the Empire Hotel, funded mostly by them. "We can't have your side dragging it down," Victoria quipped. They had orchestrated everything: the venue, the guest list, even insisting on appropriate attire to avoid embarrassing their circle. Dad wasn't even on the original invite list, too rustic. The week before, in my cramped apartment overlooking Puget Sound, I finalized vows while Evan scrolled Instagram. My best friend Jake called, "You sure about this? Evan's family treats you like a charity case." I sighed. "It's just nerves. Once married, things change." Tuesday. I flew commercial to Seattle. Evan insisted on separate arrivals for tradition. At the hotel, Dad waited awkwardly. "Daughter, you look sharp," he said, hugging me stiffly. His calloused hands betrayed years of construction work, but his eyes held a spark I couldn't place. Inside the opulent foyer, crystal chandeliers, marble floors, Evan posed for photos. His brother Ethan lounged with his girlfriend, sipping champagne. Prodigal bride arrives. He sauntered over during cocktails, scotch in hand. "Sis, congrats on snagging my bro. Must be nice upgrading from that trailer park life." Dad hovered on the periphery, chatting with waitstaff like old pals. When Victoria spotted him mingling, she hissed, "Security! Remove this, laborer." I intervened, red-faced. "That's my dad." She forced a smile. "Oh, Tom, how quaint. But really, in that outfit, we have standards." Before I could retort, Evan pulled me aside. "Babe, about your dad, maybe he can sit in the back? We have VIPs coming, tech moguls, influencers." I bristled. "He's my father, Evan. He belongs up front." The dinner the night before had been a preview, Victoria toasting Evan's bright future while glancing at me like I was a smudge on her crystal. "We're so proud of our boy choosing love over, well, everything else." Ethan laughed. "Yeah, Tom. Hope you brought that dowry check. Harper men don't come cheap." Little did they know, the real announcement would upend everything. The wedding eve cocktail hour dragged on in the hotel's gilded lounge, with string quartets and flowing champagne. Evan's family dominated, his mom fluttering with forced cheer, Robert checking emails, Ethan regaling guests with yacht stories. Dad stuck to the edges, nursing a beer, while I navigated the minefield of condescension. Victoria pulled me aside. "Michelle, dear, about tomorrow's seating, we have the CEO of Pacific Freight attending. Your father's attire. It's charming, but perhaps he could borrow a suit?" I forced a smile. "He's fine as is. This is about family, not appearances." She patted my arm. "Of course, but impressions matter in our world." Dad overheard, his expression unchanging. "No worries, Michelle. I packed my Sunday best." That night, in our suite, Evan vented, "Your dad showed up looking like he just left a job site. My followers are asking questions." "He's worked hard his whole life," I defended. "Unlike some who inherited everything." He softened. "I know, but this wedding seals our future, Harper Grant merger potential. Don't let him embarrass us." Sleep evaded me, memories flooding, Dad teaching me to fix cars, insisting on public school despite his means. Character over cash, daughter. I never questioned his migrant worker story, frequent jobs out of town, modest home. But lately, inconsistencies nagged. Cryptic calls, unexplained absences. Wedding morning dawned crisp. I dressed in my gown, Dad knocking early. "Ready?" He wore a simple suit, tie slightly askew. I straightened it. "Thanks for being here." He clapped my shoulder. "Wouldn't miss it. But Michelle, things might get interesting." The ceremony space overlooked the Sound. White roses, gold accents. Guests arrived. Evan's elite circle, my few friends. Dad mingled awkwardly, enduring snide glances. Evan's entrance was stunning. Sharp tuxedo, boutonniere perfect. Vows exchanged, rings slipped on. As the reception's toasts wound down amid the clinking of crystal glasses and the soft hum of string music echoing through the grand ballroom, all eyes turned expectantly toward the bride's side. Robert Harper had just finished boasting about the Harper family's generous dowry. A sleek Tesla Model S electric car, a luxurious condo in Seattle's trendy Belltown neighborhood, all totaling over $1.2 million. The guests murmured in admiration, impressed by the display of wealth. Now it was our turn, and the pressure hung in the air like a storm cloud. I felt my stomach twist with anxiety. We hadn't prepared any elaborate gifts. Our family wasn't about flashy shows. But before I could stammer out something simple about how love was the greatest gift of all, Dad stood up slowly from his seat at the end of the head table. He reached into the inner pocket of his modest suit jacket, the one that looked slightly rumpled next to the Harper's tailored finery, and pulled out a crisp white envelope. The room fell into a curious hush as he cleared his throat. "Actually, folks," Dad began in his calm, gravelly voice, the one I'd heard 1,000 times over backyard barbecues. "As Michelle's father, I do have a contribution to make. Following our Grant family traditions, which go back generations, I've prepared this." He opened the envelope with deliberate care and held up a check for everyone to see. First off, a personal check for $2 million to help the young couple get started on solid footing. And on top of that, shares in a little company I have some involvement with, enough to ensure their future is secure. For a split second, there was stunned silence. Then, laughter bubbled up from Ethan, Evan's smug older brother, who was lounging back in his chair with a champagne flute in hand. It spread like wildfire through the Harper side of the room, a mix of chuckles and outright guffaws. "A migrant worker handing out millions? Come on, that's hilarious," Ethan jeered loudly, his face flushed from too much wine. "Pull the other one, old man. What, did you win the lottery on your lunch break at the construction site?" Evan, dashing in his tuxedo but now looking flustered, leaned over and whispered urgently in my ear, his firm hand gripping my arm slightly. "Michelle, do something. Control him before this gets out of hand. The CEO of Pacific Freight is right over there. He's a potential partner for Harper Logistics. We can't afford to look like a joke in front of him." My face burned with embarrassment. I turned to Dad, pleading under my breath. "Dad, please, this isn't the time. Let's just sit down and enjoy the party." But Dad didn't budge. He stood there steadily, his expression unchanging, like he was used to weathering storms far bigger than this. "No need to worry, daughter," he said evenly, then addressed the room again. "Your family seems to think my daughter is marrying up with this match today. But maybe we're the ones bringing the true peak here. The Grants have always believed in quiet strength over loud displays." Victoria's cheeks flushed a deep crimson, her society poise cracking for the first time that day. She set down her glass with a sharp clink and fixed Dad with a withering stare. "How insulting!" she snapped, her voice laced with indignation. "Evan has suitors lining up, women worth billions from established families. And you're suggesting what? That our son is settling for a poor girl from the suburbs? Please." The atmosphere in the room crackled with tension, like electricity building before a lightning strike. Whispers rippled through the guests, some amused, others uncomfortable. Unbeknownst to me at that moment, Dad's mention of that little company wasn't some empty boast. It was Empire Holdings, the sprawling conglomerate he'd built in secret, valued at over $1 trillion with tentacles reaching into tech giants, logistics networks, financial institutions, and industries nationwide. He'd hidden it all to test me, to ensure I built my character without the crutch of inherited wealth. As the awkward toast stumbled forward, Evan's impatience became palpable. He fidgeted with his tie, glancing at his phone under the table. Finally, he stood and announced with forced brightness, "Let's move on to the change of vows toast. Parents, please share your blessings and any additional gifts for the happy couple." Victoria, recovering her composure, smiled sweetly and raised her glass. "For my darling son, I've set up another $500,000 in a trust fund to ensure he never wants for anything." Dad nodded politely, then replied without missing a beat, "That's kind of you. For the couple, From the grant side, we'll start with $288 million, our family's minimum for such occasions, to honor the union properly. Gasps echoed around the tables. Ethan's face twisted in disbelief. Liar, he accused, pointing a finger across the room. Where's a guy like you getting that kind of cash? This is ridiculous. Evan turned to me, his eyes wide with a mix of confusion and frustration. Michelle, explain this. What's going on with your dad? I opened my mouth to respond, but before a word could escape, Dad's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screen, a small, knowing smile creeping across his face. Hold that thought, he said calmly. Some special guests are arriving right now. This should clarify everything. The double doors at the far end of the ballroom swung open with a dramatic flourish. In strode Alexander Voss, Seattle's legendary venture capitalist, a man whose personal fortune topped $10 billion and who had funded half the tech startups in the city. He scanned the room, spotted Dad, and broke into a wide grin. Thomas, congratulations on your daughter's big day. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Victoria's face drained of color, her wineglass trembling slightly in her hand. You know Alexander Voss? Dad shrugged modestly. Old friend from way back. We've done some business together. But that was just the beginning. Following Voss came Sophia Lang, the glamorous Hollywood A-lister whose films had grossed billions worldwide. Elias Reed, the Nobel Prize-winning scientist renowned for his breakthroughs in renewable energy. They both lit up at the sight of Dad rushing forward with open arms. Uncle Thomas! They chorused in unison, enveloping him in warm hugs. The room fell into a profound hush, forks clattering forgotten onto plates. Voss turned to the crowd, his voice booming with authority. Wait, Thomas Grant? As in, the Thomas Grant? Founder and chairman of Empire Holdings? Dad nodded with quiet humility. Guilty as charged. Chaos erupted then. Gasps, murmurs, and wide-eyed stares. Evan's family gaped in unison, their jaws practically on the floor. You're the richest man in America? Victoria stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Dad chuckled softly. Trillions in assets, give or take a few billion. But who's counting? In that instant, the entire facade of the day shattered like fragile glass. My migrant worker father, the man I'd always seen as a humble laborer scraping by on construction jobs, was revealed as the very titan of industry that the Harpers had idolized from afar. The room buzzed with disbelief, and I stood there, frozen, as the truth sank in. Everything I thought I knew about my life was about to change forever. The air in the ballroom grew thick with astonishment as Alexander Voss, Sophia Lang, and Dr. Elias Reed stepped forward to greet my dad with warm embraces and genuine smiles. The guests around us started murmuring in hushed tones, their eyes wide with disbelief. Is that really Thomas Grant? The reclusive billionaire who's been pulling strings in the tech world for decades? One woman whispered to her companion. Another guest pulled out their phone, no doubt searching for confirmation online. Victoria, Evan's mother, was the first to break the stunned silence among our immediate group. Her face had turned as pale as the white roses decorating the tables, and she stammered out her words in a shaky voice. But you're supposed to be a construction worker, a migrant laborer. How is this possible? We've known you for years, Thomas, or at least we thought we did. Dad let out a soft, knowing chuckle, his eyes twinkling with a mix of amusement and quiet resolve. He adjusted his simple suit jacket, looking completely at ease despite the chaos unfolding around him. It was all a disguise, Victoria, he explained calmly. I've spent years testing Michelle's character, making sure she grew up without the corruption that comes with unlimited wealth. I didn't want her handed everything on a silver platter. She needed to earn her way, just like I did when I started out. I stood there, frozen in place, staring at my father as if seeing him for the first time. My mind raced through 1,000 memories. Him coming home dirty from job sites, teaching me to fix bikes in our garage, insisting we live modestly even when I knew we could afford more. "Dad?" I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "All these years? The late nights, the construction gigs out of town, it was all a lie?" He turned to me with a gentle nod, his expression softening with paternal pride. "Not a lie, daughter, just a necessary omission. Your mother, God rest her soul, made me promise before she passed. She wanted you grounded, raised with values over valuables. I honored that wish, even if it meant keeping Empire Holdings a secret from you until you were ready." Evan, who had been standing beside me the whole time, suddenly clung tighter to my arm, his firm grip making my stomach twist uncomfortably. His eyes lit up with a new kind of excitement, one that made me uneasy. "Michelle, oh my God, this changes everything," he exclaimed, his voice breathless. "We're set for life now. Private jets, vacation homes, the works. I can't believe it." But even as he spoke, I noticed the cracks starting to show in his facade. His smile seemed forced, and there was a flicker of something, guilt, fear, in his eyes. Meanwhile, Ethan, Evan's brother, crossed his arms and sneered from across the table. "This is way too convenient," he said loudly, drawing more attention. "A migrant worker turns out to be a trillionaire? Come on, prove it. Show us some real evidence, old man." Alexander Voss, the sharp-dressed venture capitalist with his signature silver hair, let out a hearty laugh that echoed through the room. "Proof? I've personally invested billions in Empire Holdings over the years. Thomas here has a Midas touch. Every deal turns to gold. That's all the proof you need, kid." Sophia Lang, the glamorous Hollywood star in her sparkling gown, chimed in with a warm smile. "Thomas funded my very first indie film when no one else believed in me. He's not just legit. He's a legend in quiet philanthropy." Dr. Elias Reed, the bespectacled Nobel laureate, nodded vigorously, and he bankrolled my entire research lab. Without him, half my breakthroughs wouldn't have happened. Victoria, trying to regain her composure, smoothed her dress and forced a bright smile. "Well, in that case, a proper welcome is in order. Let's raise our glasses to the Grants, the real power couple here." But Dad's gaze had shifted, sharpening as it landed on Evan. There was a knowing edge to it, like he sensed something off. "Hold the toasts," he said firmly. "First, we handle family matters. No mergers or alliances without full transparency." During the group photos that followed, Evan pulled me aside into a quiet alcove near the windows overlooking the sound. His voice was urgent, almost frantic. "Babe, can you imagine our life now? Private jets whisking us to Paris, mansions in the Hamptons, it's all ours. Your dad's secret changes the game completely." I hesitated, my mind still reeling from the revelations. "It's overwhelming, Evan. I need time to process. This isn't just about money. It's my whole life that's been upended." He waved it off with a laugh that sounded too high-pitched. "You'll get used to it. We're unstoppable now." Back at the reception, the cake-cutting ceremony approached, a towering confection of white fondant and gold accents. Robert, Evan's father, stood up with a glass in hand. "A toast to the merger. Harper-Grant Alliance. Stronger together." Dad raised an eyebrow. "Perhaps. But let's prioritize integrity over deals." I noticed Evan paling slightly, his hand subtly fidgeting with his phone in a way that seemed more than just nerves. As the dancing began, couples swirling to a live band's jazz tunes, he leaned in close. "I'm not feeling well, Michelle. Maybe it's the excitement." Concern washed over me. "Do you need a doctor? I can call one right now." He shook his head quickly. No, probably just wedding jitters. I'll be fine." Later, as I stepped away for a breather, I overheard him whispering urgently to Ethan in a corner. "The baby's fine so far. Michelle suspects nothing, keep it quiet." My world tilted on its axis. Baby? What baby? Heart pounding, I confronted him in a private side room, away from the prying eyes. Evan? Are you having a baby with someone else? He froze, his face draining of color. How did you hear that? I pressed on, my voice steady despite the storm inside. Who's the mother? Tell me the truth. Tears welled up in his eyes as he collapsed into a chair. It's not yours, Michelle. It was a mistake. A one-time thing with Lucia Reed. Lucia Reed? Dr. Reed's niece. The cocky executive from a rival firm, worth billions and always flaunting it at industry events. The betrayal hit me like a freight train, knocking the air from my lungs. All this time? While we were planning our life together? He sobbed, covering his face. I did love you, but Lucia promised more, stability, power. When I found out about the pregnancy, I panicked. I needed a cover, and our wedding, it seemed perfect. Rage boiled up inside me, mixed with heartbreak. Our entire wedding a sham? You used me to hide your affair? Before he could respond, Dad appeared in the doorway, his intuitions spot on as always. Daughter, what's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost. I confessed everything, the words tumbling out in a rush. His face hardened, jaw clenching as he processed the deceit. Handle it your way, Michelle, but remember, family comes first. No one hurts my girl without consequences. We returned to the reception for the final toasts, the atmosphere now electric with unspoken tension. I grabbed the microphone, my voice steady despite the turmoil. Everyone, I have a revelation to share. Evan has a child on the way, but the child isn't mine. Chaos erupted, guests whispering furiously, phones flashing for photos. Evan wailed, his composure breaking. Michelle, please forgive me. It was a mistake, I can explain. Dad stood tall, his voice booming over the din. Empire Holdings officially blacklists the Harpers and all associated ventures. Effective immediately. No deals, no partnerships, nothing. Victoria Harper, Evan's mother, who had always carried herself with the poise of old money, dropped to her knees in a dramatic display that silenced the nearby tables. Her perfectly manicured hands clasped together as she looked up at Dad with wide, pleading eyes. Thomas, please have mercy on us. We had no idea who you really were. If we'd known, we never would have treated you or Michelle like that. Forgive our ignorance, we're family now. Dad stood tall, his simple suit suddenly seeming like armor in the opulent room. He crossed his arms, his voice steady but laced with years of pent-up frustration. Ignorance? That's your excuse? For 3 long years, you've belittled us, looked down on Michelle as if she were beneath you, and dismissed me as some lowly laborer, not fit for your high society events. You made her feel like an outsider in her own relationship, all while she worked tirelessly at your company without a word of real appreciation. No, Victoria, this isn't about what you didn't know. It's about how you treated people when you thought they had nothing to offer. I turned to Evan, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and heartbreak. He stood there, his tuxedo now seeming like a costume in this unfolding drama, his face pale as he clutched his boutonniere. Evan, why? Why betray me like this? We were supposed to build a life together. Was it all just a lie? He bit his lip, tears streaming down his cheeks, ruining his polished look. Michelle, it wasn't supposed to be like this. The pressure from my family was too much. They wanted someone with status, with power. Lucia promised security, a future where I wouldn't have to worry. But I do care for you. I thought I could make it work, balance everything. Please, understand, I was scared of losing it all. It was too late. The words felt hollow. Understand? You've been lying to me for months, using our wedding as a cover. This ends now, the wedding's off. Just then, Lucia Reed stepped forward from the crowd, her smug smirk cutting through the tension like a knife. She was dressed in a sharp evening gown, exuding the confidence of old money, her arm possessively around Evan's waist as if claiming her prize. He's right, Michelle. Evan's mine now. We belong together. Same world, same ambitions. Dad's eyes narrowed as he turned to Lucia, his voice booming with authority. Lucia Reed? Your uncle, Dr. Elias Reed, is right here among the guests. I wonder what he'd say about this betrayal. He gestured to Dr. Reed, the Nobel laureate, who had risen from his seat, his face twisted in disappointment. Dr. Reed shook his head slowly, his voice grave and echoing in the hushed room. Lucia, you've brought shame on our family. I disown you, effective immediately. No more support, no more name-dropping. You're on your own. Enraged, Ethan, Evan's brother, lunged at me with a wild swing, his face flushed red from humiliation and alcohol. You ruined everything, you nobody! But before his fist could connect, hotel security, alerted by the chaos, intervened, pinning him back with professional efficiency. Let me go. This isn't over. Robert Harper, Evan's father, puffed up his chest in a last-ditch show of bravado. We'll sue you for defamation, Grant. This reveal, it's entrapment. Our lawyers will bury you. Dad threw his head back and laughed, a deep, resonant sound that filled the room and drew uneasy chuckles from some guests. Sue me? Go ahead, Robert. Empire Holdings' legal team eats cases like yours for breakfast. They've handled billion-dollar disputes without breaking a sweat. But good luck explaining your family's deceit in court. As the drama unfolded, the Harpers' world crumbled in real time. Guests checked stock apps on their phones, watching Harper Logistics' shares plummet, down 30% in minutes as word of the scandal leaked. Partners who'd been toasting them earlier withdrew handshakes, murmuring excuses as they headed for the exits. Can't associate with this mess, one whispered. Alexander Voss, the venture capitalist, leaned in toward Dad with a supportive clap on the back. Thomas, old friend, need any backup? I can pull some strings if things get messy. Dad shook his head, smiling faintly. Appreciate it, Alex, but we've got this under control. This family's resilience is stronger than any empire. I stepped forward, addressing the remaining guests with a steady voice, though my hands trembled slightly at my sides. Thank you all for being here today and witnessing the truth. What started as a celebration has become a lesson in honesty and integrity. Please enjoy the rest of the evening on us. Dad pulled me aside near the windows, away from the prying eyes, his expression softening with pride. I'm proud of you, daughter. You handled that with grace. Now, it's time to step up. Lead the way forward. My phone buzzed. An emergency call from Empire's board. Ms. Grant, we need you at headquarters. Succession protocols activated. Dad nodded approvingly. Your time, Michelle. Show them what a real Grant can do. As the Harpers fled the ballroom in disgrace, Victoria supported by Robert, Evan trailing with a bowed head, Ethan muttering threats under his breath, revenge tasted bittersweet. It wasn't just about tearing them down. It was about rising above, proving that true power comes from character, not deception. But necessary? Absolutely. The old dynamics were shattered, paving the way for something authentic. In the weeks that followed the wedding disaster, the media frenzy was relentless. Headlines screamed across every major outlet, "Billionaire's secret life exposed at daughter's wedding bombshell." Empire Holdings stock surged by 15% overnight. Investors thrilled by the revelation of Dad's ironclad leadership and the company's untapped potential. Meanwhile, the Harpers were crumbling. Harper Logistics filed for bankruptcy within a month. Their once stable empire eroded by withdrawn partnerships and a flood of lawsuits from jilted clients who no longer wanted to associate with the scandal. Evan bombarded me with messages, a mix of tearful apologies and desperate pleas. Michelle, please, I never meant to hurt you like this. It was a mistake. One night with Lucia that spiraled out of control. We can fix this. Start over. I read them once, felt a pang of the old affection, but deleted them without replying. What was there to say? Trust shattered, like that doesn't rebuild overnight. Lucia, on the other hand, faced the full brunt of the fallout. Empire's legal team slapped her with defamation and fraud suits for her role in the deception, and her uncle, Dr. Reed, publicly disavowed her in a press release. Family is sacred. Betrayal has no place here. Lucia slunk away to some overseas hideout, her billion-dollar inheritance frozen pending investigations. Dad and I had long, heartfelt talks in those early days, often over coffee in his modest, now revealed as deliberately understated, home office overlooking the Seattle skyline. He finally opened up about the elaborate disguise he'd maintained for decades. "I built Empire Holdings from the shadows, daughter," he explained one evening, his voice steady but laced with regret. "Started with Grant Innovations, but as it grew into this trillion-dollar beast, I saw how wealth corrupts. Your mom, before she passed, made me promise to raise you grounded, away from the spotlight. No silver spoons, no easy rides. I posed as a migrant worker, taking jobs that were actually board meetings in disguise, to test if you'd forge your own path with integrity." I nodded, processing it all. It hurt, Dad. Feeling overlooked, like I wasn't good enough. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "You were always enough. This was to make you unbreakable. Look at you now, ready to lead." With that vote of confidence, I stepped into the role of Chief Operating Officer at Empire Holdings. The transition wasn't seamless. I spent grueling 80-hour weeks restructuring departments, emphasizing ethical practices over cutthroat deals. "No more shady mergers," I told the board in my first meeting. "We're building sustainably, with transparency." We audited suppliers, boosted employee welfare programs, and invested in green tech, turning the company into a model for corporate responsibility. The moves paid off. Revenues climbed 20% in the first quarter, and we snagged headlines for positive reasons. Family dynamics shifted dramatically, too. No more secrets. Dad and I communicated openly, rebuilding the bond strained by years of deception. He even started dating Clara Voss, my former mentor from college who turned out to be a key ally in his network. "She's known my secret for years," he admitted during a family dinner at our newly renovated home. Clara smiled warmly. "Thomas trusted me to guide you without spoiling the test. I'm proud of how you turned out, Michelle." The Harpers, desperate and diminished, came crawling back. Robert called one afternoon, his voice trembling. "Michelle, Thomas, please, let's reconcile. We were fools, blinded by pride. Harper Logistics is gone, but we can partner on something new." Dad's response was firm but fair. "Actions have consequences, Robert. You belittled my daughter, schemed against us. No second chances without real change." Victoria followed up with a letter, full of contrived remorse. "We misjudged you both. Evan is heartbroken, but we all deserve forgiveness." I discussed it with Dad over whiskey. "Part of me wants to help, for old time's sake." He shook his head. "Forgive in your heart, but protect the future. They've got to earn it." Instead of wallowing, I channeled the pain into purpose. I launched a foundation under Empire, funding scholarships for underprivileged kids in tech, kids like the one I thought I was. "Turn rejection into rocket fuel," I told a TEDx audience later that year, sharing my story, anonymized. The talk went viral, inspiring thousands. Lucia gave birth to a boy, naming him after Evan in a final act of defiance. Evan reached out once more. "He's innocent in this. Maybe you could meet him someday," I replied briefly. "Wish you well. Focus on being a good dad." As months turned to a year, the storm's scars faded, replaced by growth. Empire wasn't just a business anymore, it was my legacy, built on truth.